back to another episode of the Algorithm Podcast.
Yo, yo, yo.
I'm your host, Carl Holiday.
And I'm G Money.
G Money. Before we get into today's episode, be sure to follow the socials. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Most importantly, YouTube.
Yeah. TikTok, all that.
TikTok, fucking Spotify.
Have you seen all the stuff with TikTok lately?
I heard they're getting shut down, but I've been hearing that for fucking 3 years.
Yeah, they passed like a similar bill that they tried to do a couple years ago when Trump was in office, where they basically give the company, the Chinese company that owns it, I can't remember what it's called, ByteDance or something. They give them like a certain amount of time to sell their shares to the United States, or they're banning it in the United States.
Probably the people that are fucking spying on us.
Yeah. Yeah, they pretty much proved that it's like Chinese spyware. So
Yeah, great. Still gonna scroll.
yeah. Good to hear.
We're getting into some music today.
Yes.
Today
looking
we're
forward to this one. We've kind of pushed this one a couple times.
Mm-hmm. We've done a classic rock one before, and it was the Eagles.
Yeah.
It was really great. Today we are talking about, I would say, a lot of classic rock fans consider Queen as the greatest band to ever do it.
Yeah.
Like, as far as just, you don't have to be even a classic rock fan, but you know Queen songs.
Yeah, they made a lot of timeless music, and they were so versatile, and like they never really like fit inside of the genre that they actually dominated in, which was crazy.
They had a very unique sound. They sounded like nobody else. They had like a blend of 10 different people. You know, fucking Zeppelin,
Yeah.
a bunch of different people, and their sound was so unique. And at the same time, these guys were super, super, super fucking smart.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not your typical, I don't want to say band like fucking Rejects and shit like that. These guys were talking to like astrophysicists,
Yep.
you know, fucking.
Super smart guys.
Yeah. So let's dive into Queen. You want to start it off?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start it off.
All right.
All right, here we
This is
go.
a long one.
Queen is one of the most successful bands of all time, full stop. The men who comprised the band Queen were as eclectic as the band's music itself. Jesus Christ. All right. A designer, an astrophysicist, a dentist, biologist, and an electrical engineer formed a tour de force, of course, blending rock and roll, symphonic, theatrical, new wave, dance, and so many more styles over their 20-year career. Their career netted multiple multi-platinum albums and singles. Over 50 of their singles landed in the top 40, including 6 number ones. That's crazy right there. 50 singles in the top 40.
Yeah,
That's
6
a
number
big
ones.
accomplishment.
Timeless.
Yeah, definitely. The band released 14 studio albums, which collectively have spent over 1,000 weeks on the charts. Throughout their career, they played at record-setting crowds multiple times, all around the world, and trailblazed for so many bands and musicians in the decades since.
Brian May was born on July 19th, 1947, near Twickenham, Middlesex. While attending Hampton Grammar School, Brian May's first recorded foray into the world of bands was a blues rock outfit named 1984, which was named after the George Orwell novel. With his fellow classmate, bassist, and vocalist Tim Staffel. His foray into music included a signature guitar he built with his father. 1984 gained enough of a reputation to play support for music superstars Jimi Hendrix and Pink Floyd. May excelled academically at Hampton Grammar School, netting himself with 3 GCE advanced levels in physics, mathematics, and applied mathematics. He studied mathematics and physics at Imperial College, ultimately graduating with honors with a BSc degree in physics.
Cut in real quick. It was kind of crazy because there's I think the documentary we were just talking about, he spoke about how his dad was like real disappointed in him for going into, the rock band. And
He had it he had everything mapped out, planned out for him.
yeah, that's what his dad basically like felt like he threw away his whole education and his future when he made that move. And he kind of made the remark of like, I would have never went this route if we would have never built that guitar. So it was kind of just like a weird moment there where it's like his dad kind of pushed him in that direction without even knowing it.
How many other what ifs are there out there that didn't go pursue that band that we could have had?
Yeah, it was crazy, man.
Despite his success, May declined an invitation from Sir Bernard Lovell to further his studies and left 1984 to start a new project in 1968 with Tim Staffel named Smile, where they would be joined by future Queen drummer Roger Taylor. Smile's time was short, ultimately expiring in 1970 when singer Tim Staffel left the band. Tim Staffel's departure would allow Freddie Mercury and eventually John Deacon to slide in, officially kickstarting Queen.
They spoke about that a lot, how they went through a couple of bass players, and they kind of spoke about how Roger Taylor had kind of just picked up a flyer out of like one of the places that they play or something or record.
Yeah. Roger Taylor was born on July 26, 1949 in Kingsland, Norfolk. I can never say that fucking Norfolk.
Norfolk and way, Pat.
Norfolk. Yeah. The maternity ward in which his mother, Winifred Taylor, gave birth to him was opened by the princess to be known as Queen Elizabeth II. Perhaps it was fate that he would be joining Queen.
That's crazy.
Yeah. His mother was among the first 20 women to give birth there. Roger Taylor's first band was the Bubbling Over Boys. He played the ukulele at the age of 7.
Just 8 years later, Taylor joined a band with his Truro
Yeah.
schoolmates called The Reaction and played in it from 1965 to 1968. Roger Taylor originally played stringed instruments, ukulele and guitar, then switched to drums. The switch to drums manifested from the personal connection and self-recognized talent from the instrument. Taylor was inspired early on by the talent of Mitch Mitchell, Jimi Hendrix experience, but cited Keith Moon's drum sounds as the inspiration for the tuning of his kit. In 1967, Taylor began studying dentistry in London, but moved into biology and ultimately earning a BSc in biology from East London Polytechnic. Roger Taylor was notified by the friend of a call for a drummer at nearby Imperial College. The band was Smile. Before its dissolution in 1970, Smile had written 9 songs and recorded 6 of them. Doing All Right would later be re-recorded by Queen for their debut album in 1973.
The boy to be known as Freddie Mercury was born on September 5th, 1946 in the British Protectorate of Zanzibar, as Zanzibar was a British protectorate at the same time of his birth. Bulsara was born a subject of the British Commonwealth, later earning citizenship in the late 1960s. What is his real name? It's Farrokh.
Yeah, I think so.
Like Farrokh Bulsara.
Yeah.
But before then, he spent most of his childhood in India, where his musical journey would begin. At the age of 7, Bulsara began piano lessons and had started a band, the Hectics, by age 12. The Hectics was comprised of classmates at St. Peter's School near Bombay. They were keen to cover Western rock and roll pop music. Bulsara had an uncanny ability to listen to radio and replay what he heard. His orientation was music. He would always end up imitating some of the moves of Cliff Richard or Elvis. His time at St. Peter's School also influenced him to go by Freddie. I always wondered why.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder why he chose Freddie.
Yeah. In addition to his knack for replaying songs on the piano, Freddie was a fantastic singer, likely aided by his hyperdontia?
Yeah, I think that's it.
A condition of extreme supernumerary teeth. Oh, like his overbite.
Yeah.
Which gave his mouth a distinct shape and expanded his vocal range. Freddie Mercury's vocal range,
Insane, man.
like I don't
think there's anybody can compare to him.
what he can do. Like I remember I've watched some interviews and they were just talking about like how he could just stretch it and then just go with his voice.
Yeah. And they kind of molded that sound with, like, we'll probably get into that a little bit here later when we get into the actual band, but they kind of molded that. They were the first people to kind of do this huge multi-track layer. I've kind of talked to you about it before, how it'd literally be him like singing in just different tones 15 times and they stack it on top of each other.
Yeah, it's like 3 different
sound.
fucking
almost
songs.
like that choir sound where it sounds like multiple people, but it'd be, the other 3 singing and the other 2 singing, and then Freddie just layering and layering and layering his voice, man.
Yeah, they said they figured out a way how to make it sound like, even though there'd be 3 or 4 of them singing, it'd make it sound like there'd be 70 people singing.
Yep. In the mid-1960s, the Balsara family fled the violence from the revolution against the Sultan of Zanzibar, ultimately landing on west central London. Freddie would eventually enroll at Ealing Art College to study graphic art and design, following a year of fashion design. Here, Freddie Balsara would meet and befriend Staffel. Following the latter's departure from Smile, Taylor and May recruited Balsara as the lead singer, forming the main lineup that would become Queen. With the formation of the new project, Balsara shed his surname and adopted Mercury, inspired by his own lyric "Mother Mercury." Look that they've done to me, from My Fairy King. The only thing missing to fill out the quintessential Queen lineup was finding the right bassist. John Deacon was born on August 19th, 1951, in Leicester, growing up in...
We're not good with these, England
I'm not sure
pronunciation.
These. Ode Bay, Leicestershire. John Deacon developed a passion for
both... How the fuck did you pull that out, Leicestershire?
I don't have a clue. John Deacon developed a passion for both electronics and music at a young age. John Deacon would devour magazines on the subject of electronics, as well as building small devices, including a modified reel-to-reel tape deck to record songs directly from the radio. As for music, Deacon had a keen interest in the Beatles and soul music, which that's fucking crazy, at that young age, be able to do that at that time period, because, that was shit I was doing when I was,
17, 18?
No, I mean, from a tape deck, you used to be able to, record stuff, straight from the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Your old, boom boxes, that was stuff we were still doing in the 90s, so it's crazy that he was able to do that back then.
At 14, Deacon began playing guitar in the band The Opposition, switching to bass as the band changed to the New Opposition. John Deacon carried on his childhood passion for the electronics at Chelsea College in London. In 1970, he saw an early version of Queen, but left the show unimpressed. Wow. However, a chance meeting at a disco in early 1971 between Deacon, Taylor, and May led to Deacon's audition in a lecture room at Imperial College. After several auditions and rotating basses, Deacon was ultimately chosen for his musical talent, his electronics know-how, and his quiet demeanor, offsetting the larger-than-life personality of singer Freddie Mercury.
That's kind of crazy, too. They kind of looked at him as the secret weapon a lot of times.
Yeah.
He wrote a lot of their hits. He would come up with a lot of the music for them and even some of the lyrics. So
yeah, even right there it said it was he was the counter to Freddie's just over the top fucking demeanor. You can go ahead.
Okay. Queen's early years. With the lineup that we know set, Queen played their first show on July 2nd, 1971 at Surrey College. Shortly after, May called Terry Yaden, Pie Studios engineer, where Smile had recorded their 6 songs, searching for leads of where Queen could record. Yaden brought the band into Delane Lea Studios. They traded room time in exchange for allowing the engineers to test the studio's acoustics, and they needed a group to test out the equipment and recording rooms. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Their song, Keep Yourself Alive, caught the ear of visiting Roy Thomas Baker, who would go on to produce Queen's first 5 albums.
It's crazy how that show works out.
After some shopping around, after having piqued interest from the management companies, the band reached a deal with Neptune Productions, a subsidiary of Trident. Queen took a break from performances for the first 2/3 of 1972 to begin work on their album with John Anthony and Roy Thomas Baker.
They were limited to off time in the studio, which was often in the wee early hours of the mornings. Promotion for the eponymous album began following February despite the lack of a record label. By the time April came around, Trident reached a deal with EMI Records. This was big. Despite its Slade single Keep Yourself Alive selling poorly, the album was eventually certified gold both domestically and in the US. The follow-up, Queen 2, began production right away in 1973. Their success with their first album opened up more consistent and accessible studio time, and Queen took full advantage of the studio's technology, which is, this is an example. Brian May's multi-layered orchestral-esque guitar track procession.
Yeah,
Kind of what you were talking about. Yep. Following the recording of the album, Queen supported glam rock champions Mott the Hoople for the rest of the year. Queen 2 was released following March, peaking at number 5 in the UK. Seven Seas of Rye became Queen's first experience cracking the top 10. That fucking song is so bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
Like, you don't know what the fuck they're talking about in it at all.
Yeah, I didn't at all.
But
it's a good,
but
it's fucking
but
such
it's a
great
good
sound.
song.
Yeah.
Like, I seen an interview where the guy was talking. He was like, yeah, when Seven Seas of Rye come out, like the first 3 bars in it, he was like, they make you. He was like, you have no idea what they're talking about, but they almost make you feel like you're just not as smart as they are.
Right. I feel like that kind of about a lot of their songs. Like, especially when I was younger, I didn't have a fucking clue what they're talking about. Like,
They still
I
just
know
rocking it.
We Are the Champions, but like,
Yeah.
other than that, I'm like, what the fuck are these guys talking?
I've been singing Queen all week to like
Oh,
Hallie
yeah.
and stuff ever since we decided to do this one.
Straight bangers, man.
This next part is wild. I didn't even know about this until yesterday. Despite a hepatitis diagnosis for Brian May forcing them to cancel tour dates, the band hit the studio again and released Sheer Heart Attack in August of 1974, just 5 months after Queen's 2's release.
That's fucking
So-
crazy. 'Cause
So
back then, you never did that, bro. They would drop an album and tour that bitch for like a year and a half.
Yeah,
before
so
they
when-
ever even went to the studio again.
when Brian May got hepatitis, they were in fear of him losing his arm.
Really?
Yeah, so
I didn't know
he was
that.
in the hospital about to die, and at the same time they were recording this album. So what they were doing was they were recording album parts of these songs and leaving big ass gaps in
Yeah.
them for his guitar parts.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Like, imagine just recording and leave. Okay, so here's a guitar part here. We got to leave that out for him when he comes back.
And that's kind of what shows like how like smart these guys really were, because it's like putting a puzzle together without having a huge piece of the puzzle. You know what I mean? To sit there and be able to like produce that, because ultimately, like back then, they had producers that would put these songs together. But like you can tell just from like watching these documentaries and stuff that these guys they're right at the boards. They're putting it together with the producer, so they're producing just as much as the actual producer, because that's the producer's job, is to actually like have an overall direction and see it and put it together for the artist, because a lot of times they obviously don't know how to do that shit, but these guys did, man. And
Their
it
intelligence
shows.
took them. I think their intelligence. I'm not saying other bands are stupid anyway.
Right.
I'm trying to word this the right way, but their intelligence is what like ascended them above everybody else.
And you can tell like from their first couple albums they started
Figuring it out.
yeah, you figure it out, and that's you hear him talk about that, how we kind of started figuring out how to do this stuff, and you know the genius comes out.
Yeah.
You start seeing it in between that second and third album, probably.
Yeah. Sheer Heart Attack was a success in both the UK and the US, reaching number 2 in the UK and certified gold in the US. I said sheer. Wait, is that? I mean,
No,
it's
that's
sheer. It's
yeah, it's Sheer Heart
there's a
Attack.
There's a typo.
Yeah.
Sheer Heart Attack is also where the band's fluid blending of styles took off. Opener Britain Rock, Britain Rock was a kick in the face with riveting, galloping guitars and frantic drum fills. You can go ahead.
Okay. The next song on the album, Killer Queen,
Banger.
is Sheer Vaudeville.
Vaudeville,
Yeah, sometimes these words be fucking me up. A plucky swinging piano and swinging vocal harmonies spinning the tale of a high-class prostitute. That song's a killer song, bro. I mean, literally a straight fucking banger.
I've been singing it today.
Yeah. Killer Queen became Queen's biggest hit so far, reaching number 2 on the British charts and number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. Queen began to tour the world in 1975, headlining a U.S. tour and playing in Canada and Japan for the first time. Unfortunately, the worldwide success and the money it generated did not trickle down to the band, who were stifled by their original deal with Trident.
That's how it always goes.
Trident wanted their nearly $250,000 investment returned before paying out better shares to the band. By August of 75, the band had negotiated out of their contract and was on the lookout for a new management, ultimately settling on John Reed. His first order to the band: "I'll take care of business, you make the best record you can." Queen took that advice and spent a record amount of money, £343,000
Yeah.
in 2022 money, on their fourth album, A Night at the Opera. It opened with Death on Two Legs, a relentless and vengeful taunting track later dedicated to Trident in concert, which if you go listen to that song, it's straight shots at the fucking record label.
It's a fucking classic rock diss record.
I kind of wanted to speak on what their original deal was. Their original deal was basically like they give the album to their production company and then they go shop it to the record label. So they were literally just getting middleman from both of them, and were getting absolutely nothing. I think the drummer, he spoke about it, how they basically were paying out like 95% of everything they made at that point, which left them absolutely broke.
Nothing. Yeah. A Night at the Opera received much acclaim and success in the UK, but was blown away in the US by the US response, going triple platinum across the Atlantic. But the most enduring song of this album is without question Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody has its origins in several pieces of music written during Mercury's time at Ealing College. Top 10 song of all time?
Yeah, it's got to be.
I mean,
you could
across
say
all
top,
genres?
Yeah, across all genres. You could say easily probably top 3 or top 5 rock song ever made.
Yeah, and it's so cliche to say that about them because that's obviously the name of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just...
You don't get movies made about you unless you're a legend.
It's 5 songs built into one, multi-layered, different. I mean, it's just... Yeah.
And it all just, at the same time, just as rides all together.
Yep, perfect. It's one of those ones like I was talking about, like you don't have to know Queen, but you know that song.
You know that song, exactly.
Altogether, Bohemian Rhapsody is ambitious in production as it is in songwriting. The track itself has nearly 200 overdubs.
That's the track, the layers, bro.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I said. We talked about this documentary. We both watched. It was by BBC, and they have they got Freddie, like footage of him at the boards, like playing these track after track after track after track of him singing one certain part, and it's just different, different tone, different key, like just everyone down the board is just completely different, and then they layer them on top of each other for this perfect sound that you got out of that song.
Yeah, the interview I watched, I think it was with Deacon, he said, to this day, I still don't even know what Bohemian Rhapsody means.
That was kind of the genius of Freddie Mercury, because you kind of get that from everybody in the band. Like a lot of times I didn't know what he was even talking about. They just knew it was fucking gold.
Yeah. We just played. EMI cited the length of the track. I remember this. I remember watching the movie and they just didn't want to fucking...
Yeah, it's kind of like that same thing that we talked about in the Eagles episode with Hotel California. Like they gave it to the record label, and for both those songs, the record label was like, no, we cannot put this out. Nobody's going to listen to a fucking 10-minute long song.
Freebird's 9 minutes.
Yeah, fuck you. Put that shit out.
EMI cited the length of the track and refused to release the single, but ultimately caved to the pressure from the band and the enthusiasm of radio listeners following Kenny Everett, who was from Capital London Radio, spinning a promotional copy nearly 15 times through the weekend.
And they said actually in that documentary that he stole it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean imagine that song never sees the light of the day because the record label buries it. Like, man.
I'll take this next part and you can take it. The single sat atop the UK charts for nearly 10 weeks. The single is the third best-selling single of all time in the UK and is the only single ever to sell over 1 million copies more than once. The promotional video shot for Bohemian Rhapsody received extra attention, racking up 5 times the usual budget for promotions. Ultimately, Bohemian Rhapsody would be Queen's first #1 hit. That's kind of wild to think about.
Insane.
You would think Killer Queen would have went number 1.
Yeah.
It would also go #1 in the early 90s again, thanks to the movie's Wayne's World.
Which is crazy that it later goes #1 again.
Did it go #1 when Bohemian Rhapsody came out recently, or do we know?
I don't think so. But fucking shout out to Kenny Everett for fucking with the sticky fingers and goes and spins it that weekend, man. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Never one to rest on their laurels. Queen was back in the studio just a year later following another international tour across North America and Japan. A Day at the Races is the first Queen album to not feature Baker as producer, instead being self-produced by the band with help from Mike Stone, who also lent backing vocals to the album. So that kind of goes to what I speak at like earlier in the episode, where it's like these guys were producing, and at that point it's like, what do we need a producer for when we can do all this stuff on our own already, and probably already had a lot of the control.
Imagine how much money these dudes would have made if they just went independent.
Man,
God damn.
it's just they back then, like, they didn't know that shit, man.
Yeah.
A bunch of people got fucked back then. Okay. A Day at the Races peaked at number 5 in the US, but hit number 1 in both the UK and Japan. It featured the gospel-inspired smash hit "Somebody to Love," which actually Freddie said that
I love that
songwriting-wise, that this song he thought was actually better than Bohemian Rhapsody, which is probably one of my favorite Queen songs. "Somebody to Love," such a great fucking song. The layers in that shit too are just so good.
Yep.
"Somebody to Love" featured Queen's iconic vocal layering and counter melodies. The single reached number 2 in the UK and 13 in the US, which is just crazy. It's like you hear these songs now, it's like, how what else was on the charts? That's what I'm saying.
what number
Jesus.
I mean, what was this? What year was this? 76, 75?
What it say?
It'd have to be something with like Bowie or fucking maybe Hendrix.
I guess, man. I don't fucking know.
I'd have to look that
That's
up.
wild. All right. Queen followed the success of this album with a record-setting concert in terms of attendance in 1976, attracting 150,000 people to London's historic Hyde Park. Their following tour in 1977 was Queen's most successful yet, playing to sold-out crowds at New York's infamous Madison Square Garden. News of the World, Queen's sixth studio album, was released in 1977 to mixed reviews, but has since sold 4 million copies in the United States and 2 million in the UK. While the album itself received mixed reviews, it was carried by stadium rock anthems We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions.
I love that fucking album cover.
Yeah.
It's the album cover with the
Where
big
the-
fucking silver fucking
Yeah.
dude on it. Yeah. They actually had, I almost bought this. They had the vinyl of that at Cracker Barrel.
Oh, that'd
And
be
I almost
badass.
bought it
Just
for
put
this
it up there.
episode.
That'd be badass.
$45.
Yeah. Old Cracker Barrel prices.
Yeah,
Bro. You can slap another
$45.
$25 on everything at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah. The News of the World tour reached new heights for the band, citing praise for their stage design in addition to their usually bombastic performances. More sold-out shows at Madison Square Garden saw the band receive the MSG Gold Ticket Award for selling more than 100,000 unit tickets all time. Beginning in 1978 with Jazz, Queen began recording albums at Mountain Studios. Mountain Studios was the band's recent purchase in Montreux, Switzerland. Jazz received similar praise to News of the World, both initially and in the long term. It peaked at number 2 in the UK and number 6 in the US. Jazz featured the band's most simply fun singles to date: Fat Bottom Girls, Bicycle Rays, and Don't Stop Me Now. After a few years of touring worldwide, Queen released Crazy Little Thing Called Love, their most far-reaching single to date, cracking the top 10 in multiple countries, even holding the number 1 spot in Australia for 7 weeks. All boppers.
Straight up.
Except for Live Killers, a live album released in 1979. Queen's next album was 1980's The Game, with 2 singles, A Crazy Little Thing Called Love and another one, Bites the Dust, reaching number 1 in the US. The album ultimately became Queen's 6th platinum album, topping the Billboard 200 for 5 weeks. Stylistically, The Game was the first Queen album to feature a synthesizer. That's wild to think about.
And that's kind of what we spoke on earlier, having that secret weapon. And their bass player, he actually wrote that song, and seemed like a couple of other band members didn't really like that song, but ended up being one of their biggest hits ever.
That's how it works. You can go ahead.
The album ultimately became. Nope, you just read that.
Their
before.
next
All
world
right.
tour.
Then their next world tour would see Queen become the first rock band to play large shows in South America, including a record-setting show in Buenos Aires with an attendance of 300,000 plus, opening the doors for other rock bands worldwide. They actually said that they had to go because it was like a what was it, like a dictatorship down there at the time. They had to go negotiate with like their war general to like get them to be able to let them play like the shows at all, because they were like worried about like riots and shit happening.
I wouldn't be fucking playing at all.
Yeah, they talked about how sketchy it was. It seemed fucking scary to even do it.
Yep.
In 1981, David Bowie dropped by Queen in the studio. The impromptu visit eventually turned into a jam and recording session between the artists, culminating in Queen's number 1 single, Under Pressure. Banger. Later that year, Queen released their first compilation album, which would go on to become the best-selling album in recorded chart history, spending nearly 1,000 weeks in the UK album chart by itself and going 9 times platinum in the US.
1,000 weeks.
Crazy.
What is that?
20 years
10, 20 years? And like 18 years?
What is it?
52 weeks in a year. Like 18 years?
That's fucking nuts. Insane. Never a band to fear the fusion and adoption of different styles, 1982's Hot Space was a big step away from their more traditional blend of hard rock, theater, and progressive rock. The opening track, Staying Power, featured the keyboard, horn-based approach, perfectly capturing the soundscape of the 1980s. However, tensions were rising within the band. Freddie Mercury and John Deacon were as excited with the band's new sound as Roger Taylor and Brian May were not. Those two were kind of the more like traditional rock sides, and I was kind of getting away from that at that point.
Yeah.
Tensions arose further between Brian May and Paul Printer, Mercury's personal manager, of whom the former felt the latter was asserting too much influence on the frontman. Tours turned less wholesome as well. Audiences began to heckle the band on stage, voicing displeasure with the band's new musical style. Additionally, a surge in homophobia in North America turned performances sour as fans would throw disposable razor blades onto the stage. Appropriately, Queen determined to not play in North America, and Freddie Mercury would never return to play in North America.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. The band entered a hiatus for most of that year and utilized it to pursue solo projects. The Works, which was released in February of 1984, saw a return to their hard rock sound while still absorbing synth pop and the new wave. The reviews were split. The album went triple platinum in the UK but failed to reach their previous album's success in the US. The following tour brought controversy. Despite playing to integrated crowds, concerts in apartheid South Africa placed the band on the United Nations blacklisted artist list. In the mid-1980s saw more touring success for Queen despite their wanting success in the US. In January of 1985, Queen played to 300,000 people for 2 nights at the Rock in Rio festival. Live footage of this concert was released on VHS and broadcast on MTV in the US. There, the Works tour concluded with sold-out shows in Australia and Japan. But all that paled in comparison to the nearly 2 billion TV audience, roughly 40% of the world population, due to the infamous Live Aid concert at Wembley Stadium. Despite the star-studded lineup, Queen was invariably a favorite performance of that night. That fucking show, that concert lineup, was everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. And they had a 20... I don't know if it says
like
it. It was
18 minutes.
18 to 20 minutes set, and people say it's the greatest set of all time, ever.
Yeah.
Like, there's footage of that set.
Yeah,
it's
killed that
world
shit,
famous.
bro.
Freddie Mercury with the white tank top and the white pants.
And I don't know if you know this, but they actually spoke about how Freddie was having some sort of problem with his voice at that point, and he was actually told or recommended by his doctor not even to perform that night, but he went against the doctor's choice, went against the doctor and just performed anyways and delivered one of the greatest performances ever.
God, that show was wild.
Yeah.
Just seeing how many people were in the crowd of that. Like, I was showing Todd that. I was like, you just got to watch that because he hadn't seen it.
It's an insane amount of people, man. Where you can just look out and it looks like a mile of people. Like,
Yeah,
it's just an endless amount of people.
And like there's famous footage of him from that show, just how he would command the crowd,
Oh, yeah.
and he would go like a "Dale,"
Yeah.
and he would go "Dale, Dale, Dale," and the crowd would mimic it. That's crowd control.
Oh yeah, he always had that. I mean, he did that like at a lot of his shows, and any of the footage I watched, and any of these documentaries, videos that I watched, and any of the research that I did, this dude was just. It was it was almost like they spoke about that kind of how like it was theatrical. Like his concerts weren't concerts; they were like performances. They were like
all the way
actual
from his
shows.
look to his actions to everything. It was all theater. Okay, Queen would go on to record 3 more albums following Live Aid. A Kind of Magic, which was in 1986, The Miracle in 1989, and Innuendo in 1991. The title track of Innuendo would go on to become another #1 single in the UK. You can go ahead.
These albums received mixed reviews upon release, but would nonetheless go on to have much commercial success over time. Due to Mercury's failing health from a secret battle with HIV and AIDS, the band's last live performance was in 1986, a sold-out show of 120,000 fans at Knebworth Park.
I think it's Knebworth.
Knebworth?
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that.
Well, fuck that. I thought it was silent.
Yeah.
The last couple of years of Mercury's life were marked by bravery and willingness to keep pushing himself for the band's sake. Speaking of Mercury's last year or so in the studio, Brian May stated, "He just kept saying, write me more stuff. I want to just sing and do it, and when I'm gone, you can finish it off." He had no fear, really. Freddie Mercury passed away on November 24th, 1991 from bronchial
pneumonia.
Yeah. Brought on by his struggle with AIDS. A tribute concert was held, drawing a crowd of over 70,000 to Wembley Stadium on Easter Monday in 1992. The concert was also broadcast on television and radio, reaching up to 1 billion people. The concert served both as a tribute to late Freddie Mercury and as a springboard for AIDS awareness. The profits from the concert were utilized to kickstart an AIDS charity named the Mercury Phoenix Trust. With an irreplaceable performer like Freddie Mercury, amidst a seamless group of musicians, Queen could certainly never be the same without Freddie Mercury. Indeed, Save a one-off performance with the rest of the group and Elton John in 1997. The tribute concert in 92 was John Deacon's last full-length concert with Queen. He fully retired.
We're going to restart
Yeah.
that.
I don't even know how that came out. I didn't even try to say that. Fully retired from recording one last song, No One But You. Only the Good Die Young in 1997, a tribute to their late frontman. Just one more album was released posthumously in 1995 titled Made in Heaven. The album is a compilation of songs that were started by Mercury or songs that he contributed to before his death and finished post-death by the rest of the band. The album went number 1 in a few countries, including the UK, and charted in the top 10 in 9 countries.
As a wonderful expression of gratitude to Queen for recording 6 of their last albums in Montreux in November 1996, a 3-meter tall statue of the late lead singer overlooking Lake Geneva was unveiled. The statue, sculpted by Irina Sedleka, strikes Freddie Mercury's iconic fist in the air pose while wearing his signature yellow military jacket. Every September, the city holds Freddie Mercury's Montreux Memorial Day in celebration of Freddie Mercury's birthday and his legacy.
She killed that, by the way, because a lot of times when they do these statues, they end up looking butt. It's really good.
Killed it. The event attracts Queen's fans and people close to the lead singer from all over the globe. Each year since 2013, the Mercury Phoenix Trust has organized the official evening. In May of 2002, the Queen rock opera, We Will Rock You, opened at the Dominion Theater in the West End. The show was produced by Hollywood actor Robert De Niro, and the show was written by comedian Ben Elton in collaboration with Brian May and Roger Taylor. Roger Taylor and Brian May also stepped away from performing as Queen until 2004. They began to tour again, sharing the billing with guest singers as Queen Plus. Notable collaborations have included Queen Plus Paul Rogers and Queen Plus Adam Lambert. Despite being half of the original lineup, this version of Queen would continue to see success. You can go ahead.
The world, they would tour new places of the world, Tel Aviv, Israel, play the stadium-sized crowds, open the 91st Academy Awards, and receive the Japan Gold Disc Award to the most popular Western act in Japan, 4 times between 2005 and 2021. In 2018, the biographical drama Bohemian Rhapsody about the band was released. It was directed by Bryan Singer and co-produced by Jim Beach, Queen's manager. The film spans Queen's career from the inception in 1970 to their performance at the Live Aid 15 years later. The film was a smash, grossing over $900 million on a $50 million budget. The film broke the record for all-time box office for a biopic film. Even a fake version of Queen's can't help but break records, which I cannot think of the dude's name that played Freddie Mercury, but he killed that shit, man. And they did a really good job making
casting
him, making him look like it.
Gosh, dude.
He killed that shit. It's hard to overstate the influence that Queen had on popular music. The bands and performers they have influenced span decades across multiple genres of music. From heavy metal acts like Judas Priest and Rob Zombie to country acts like Faith Hill to pop acts such as George Michael, which George Michael actually performed at the tribute concert for him right after he passed away, and he fucking did a really good job. Like, if anybody sounded close to him, George Michael did a good job. And Lady Gaga, to everybody's emo favorite, My Chemical Romance. The unique blend of styles that Queen captured in their own music can be traced across the popular music that followed. Their legacy leaves them number 3 all-time for British bands in terms of number 1 albums, trailing only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And their greatest hits album is one of the best-selling albums ever, selling over 25 million copies. Their tour and broadcasted live performances have left a deep emotional impact on billions of people across the entire world.
Queen. Man. So the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. So at that time, it was probably the Rolling Stones that were number 1.
Could have been.
Early
I don't know,
70s.
man. What's your favorite Queen song? And there's so many to pick from, but it's one of them ones. It's kind of like how we did on the Eagles show, or the Eagles episode, where it's just like there's so many.
It's Radio Gaga.
Yeah, radio. Seeing like I love that song, but like I was always a big fan of Fat Bottom Girls when I was a kid. Yeah, banger.
Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah, Another One Bites the Dust is a banger.
Killer
I never even knew that
Queen.
was them for the longest
Yeah.
time when I was a kid.
Under Pressure with
That-
the
It just kind of speaks on how versatile they were because they literally just made like staying in the rock genre, obviously, where that was their home, but like they just could do anything.
yeah. But Bohemian Rhapsody is like I think is in a class of its own.
Yeah,
That's got to be like
Somebody to Love, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Fat Bottom Girls got to be like
and
my
Radio
top
Gaga
three right
for
there.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Queen. I'm not gonna hate you to say they're the greatest ever.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yep. Till next time.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Go
Yep.
follow the socials, do all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Go watch the Eagles episode.
Oh yeah, go check the Eagles episode. Go check all our episodes, man. We're coming with good stuff, and we're gonna keep coming with it.
Yep. See you.
Peace.